Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. CASTORICE has been out for a bit over a week now, and I think it's about time I do my free-to-play CASTORICE discussion / review since, I've had a while to try and test her out now. Now what we're going to do here is first go through how easy she is to build, mostly concerned with her best free-to-play LIGHTCONE option, since I know that's caused a bit of discussion and some people don't know the full picture. After that, we're going to go through her E0S0 performance in Pure Fiction and APOC Shadow with E0S0 support, and then her MOC performance testing out various teams to see how viable her non-best in slot teams are. So yeah, with that being said, let's just hop right into it. But real quick, before we get into that, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, lootbar.gg. You can use Lootbar to top up in your favorite games like Honkai Star Rail or Genshin Impact and save up to 23%. Lootbar leverages favorable exchange rates and uses Hoyoverse partner route, so you can get the most affordable prices and enjoy all Hoyoverse top-up bonuses as well. And with the top-up bonus reset in 3.2's anniversary, this means that you can get double Generic shards with your first purchase on Lootbar. Transactions on Lootbar are also simple, safe and secure, as you only need to enter your UID and your region in order to get fast delivery. For example, if I want to buy the 3,280 Generic shards, all I have to do is go down here, enter in my UID, as well as my server region, and then go to top up now, and they typically arrive in less than a minute, and you can get double for your first time purchase thanks to the anniversary. And creators like Raiden Shotgun, To That Time, and Mordex Tryhard are all also collaborating with Lootbar, so they are trustworthy, and they also have some very good reviews on Trustpilot, and I just use them myself so I can vouch for the authenticity, speed, and security. New users can also get an extra 8% off, so be sure to check out Lootbar with the link in the description. Thank you to Lootbar, and back to the video. Starting off with our CASTORICE build as well, so that you can see, to save us some time at the end. This is what we're working with, 87 speed, 58 crit rate, which is exactly how much you need to get 100% if you're playing her with RMC, 198 crit damage. Obviously, for most teams, this will go up to plus 200, because there are a lot of crit damage boosters in this team. And now this is where the interesting stuff comes in, because as you can see, I am using her on Himiko's LIGHTCONE right now. If you don't know how CASTORICE's best in slot LIGHTCONEs work, it's obviously, first of all, her best in slot, it's her best by far. But then second best in slot is kind of a tie between Mydei's LIGHTCONE as well as the Battle Pass LIGHTCONE. And then after that, it's any 1270 LIGHTCONE, so you have a lot of people recommending Bailu's LIGHTCONE. That's because it has 1270 base HP, which is going to be your third best in slot option for CASTORICE. But then after that is any 1164 LIGHTCONE, such as Himiko's LIGHTCONE here, or something like, for example, a Bronya's LIGHTCONE, once again just for the base HP, because HP is very important for CASTORICE. And then after that is when you have either a tie between the 1058 LIGHTCONEs as well as an R5 Memory in a Blink, like so. Or, like I said, 1058, so for example, Secret Vow, Natasha's LIGHTCONE as well, I believe is 1058, like so. So yeah, those are kind of your options, and then obviously last place will be any freestyle LIGHTCONE options. So yeah, if you don't have her signature, either Battle Pass or Mydei's. If you don't have those, any 1270 LIGHTCONE like Bailu. If you don't have that, then any 1164 LIGHTCONE, for example, Himiko's, Bronya's. I think there's also quite a few Hertastore LIGHTCONEs, which are also 1164. So I feel like that's what a lot of people should be aiming for. I wouldn't really recommend Victory in the Blink R5, because first of all, it costs a bit, and then second of all, it's also still like 4% worse than the 1164 options. So you are just better off going for something like this. And then if you're wondering how my CASTORICE looks for the rest of the video, then this is what we're looking at for her endgame performance. Her pieces aren't ideal, but just built her on the Poet set and on the Bone Plane Arrangement set. That's all you really need to do. And just to show off, she is E0S0. Now she will be using this build the entire time, other than when I play her with Sunday, in which case we are going to be swapping over her plane enrollments here for a bit more crit damage as well as a bit more speed, so that she can hit 127-ish speed while Sunday is on 126. So that's how her build's going to change slightly. But yeah, other than that, this is going to be the build she's going to be on basically the entire time. So yeah, with that being said, let's just go straight into her endgame performance, starting off with, I think, Pure Fiction. Alright, and here we are starting off in Pure Fiction, and if you're wondering how good is CASTORICE in Pure Fiction, the answer is she is pretty damn good. Obviously her dragon is AoE, does a ton of damage. Her enhanced basic attack is also, I believe, or rather her enhanced skill is also, I believe, AoE, and it does quite a fair bit of damage in Pure Fiction, especially in the first two stages. Less so in the third stage, because that's where enemies tend to have insane HP pools, but it certainly does do quite a bit. And then you can also get pretty good damn uptime on her dragon as well, if enemies do hit you a fair bit. So yeah, her performance is quite good. Also, she isn't really shilled that hard in this current Pure Fiction, so this is more of a realistic performance than in something like APOC Shadow or Memory of Chaos right now, which are pretty damn tailored towards her. There is a HP buff you can get for your skills, which was more Mydei centered, but obviously CASTORICE can take advantage of it as well. But when it comes to that, I feel like if the buffs don't favor her insanely, she'll still be decent. She'll still be good for around 30 to 35k E0S0. As you can see, I am using Loja here. That's because Gallagher's healing is a bit dodgy in Pure Fiction, I think, sometimes. Obviously, you'll have it up on the boss, but less so on the summon, so that's why I chose to go for Lorcha. But there's nothing wrong with going for Gallagher either, that's for sure. So yeah, she's definitely decent at getting at least a 30k clear. She's not going to be as good as someone as, for example, like a Jade or a Dahata in the Pure Fiction, but she's still a pretty damn good unit. Think of it like Akron when she released, you know, she wasn't the best Pure Fiction unit, but she's pretty damn good, and she likely will be like that for the rest of version 3, so you know, for probably around a year you can expect her to perform pretty damn well in Pure Fiction, even at E0S0, especially if she gets some more supports in the future. When it comes to her reliance on teammates here, although I didn't test other teams, obviously Tribbie is very good in Pure Fiction. She's kind of a Pure Fiction specialist. First of all, her damage helps you with clearing waves quite a bit as well, because she does deal quite insane damage in Pure Fiction herself. Although, when it comes to buffing Castor's damage, Castor's does so much damage, and obviously you don't need as much in Pure Fiction as I said before. So, I don't think her damage boost is as necessary. Even without Tribbie, you should still be able to get like a 30k clear with someone like either a Jiaocho or a Ruan Mei, who I will touch on obviously in the Memory of Care section. I wouldn't really recommend Pela because you might have some defense shred uptime issues, but yeah, if you have a Jiaocho or a Ruan Mei, then you know they are pretty damn viable, or a Sunday as well, which is what I want to move on to. Sunday I actually think could be pretty damn good in Pure Fiction as well, because even if you don't have full uptime on his buffs, you will probably still be able to do quite a fair bit of damage, and he will help you with your dragon's uptime, and I feel like that's the most important thing. You know, getting your dragon up as much as you can is very valuable in Pure Fiction, because that's just about the right amount of HP you need to deal. So yeah, Castor's is a very good Pure Fiction unit right now. I'm not sure if I would call her quite top 3. You know, maybe someone like Rappa is slightly better, definitely the Hata and Jade, but you know, she's definitely probably a top 5, maybe even a top 3 unit in Pure Fiction. I'm not quite sure if I'd go that far yet, but like I said, it's definitely possible. So yeah, E0S0 still very, very good in Pure Fiction, even in alternative teams, but if you have her best in slot team, then she will pretty much destroy most things in Pure Fiction. You know, not exactly a 40k clear, but you know, you can get pretty damn close. Probably in the next Pure Fiction, she probably will be able to get a 40k if we're being honest, because it will probably be shielded quite for her. But yeah, with that being said, let's move on to APOC Shadow performance. Alright, well then, when it comes to Castor's APOC Shadow performance, there is one thing I should say straight away, and that is that this APOC Shadow is very, very much built for her. She is getting heavily shielded when it comes to this current APOC rotation, so do take her performance with a grain of salt/skepticism, because both sides are quantum weak, and there are also HP buffs on both sides in order to boost her performance and make her more viable. But what I will say is, design-wise, as a unit, she is very good for APOC Shadow, because she is very strong in AoE, and there are sometimes AoE bosses such as the banana boss, and she is also strong in single target, especially with the APOC Shadow buffs when the weakness is broken for the main enemy, so she will deal insane damage either way. So she basically does have the perfect design for APOC Shadow to deal with any boss, whether it's AoE like the banana boss or the swarm boss in the current one, or single target like Hule is right now. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about her performance in APOC Shadow already, because like I said, first of all, it's heavily favored for her, and also I already did a clear using Castor's on the second half, which I have already uploaded, and then I do later also have a clear coming out using her on the first half in a dual DPS team with Mydei. What I will say is, teams wise, she is very good. You know, Sunday's viable, RMC's viable, Tribbie's viable, Ruan Mei's viable, Pela's viable, Jiaocho's viable. They are all very strong in options in APOC Shadow as well. Ruan Mei especially here shines even at E0S0, because her weakness break efficiency is very helpful with getting the enemy's weakness broken quicker, which is very much appreciated in APOC Shadow. When it comes to dual DPS teams, you know, you can run a Blade on the second half because there is wind weakness, and you can also run Mydei on the first half because there's a Matching weakness. When it comes to dual DPS teams in APOC Shadow, I wouldn't recommend them if the other DPS's weakness isn't included, because in APOC Shadow, rather than having a base 20% resistance to elements they're not weak to, it's actually 40%, so I wouldn't really recommend using Mydei on the second half or Blade on the first half. But if they do have the weakness of the second DPS, then it's very viable, and in fact probably even very strong, as you guys will see when it comes to my Mydei clear. So when it comes to ranking wise for APOC Shadow, I would say obviously, you know, number 1 would still probably be Tribbie, RMC, stuff like that, although Ruan Mei will be a very good replacement for Tribbie, like I said, thanks to how APOC Shadow works when it comes to weakness break. Sunday, of course, viable, and then Pela Jiaocho is kind of your options beneath. But probably between those options, you still have the dual DPS teams, which if HP is getting shielded, then the dual DPS teams might even be better than running RMC. So, you know, something like a Castor's, Tribbie, and then a Mydei is very, very strong. Might even be the best team for this APOC Shadow, like I said. But normally, then it would just be your standard RMC, Tribbie. But yeah, with that being said, let's just hop into MOC now. Alright, well then, here we are in MOC, and I do actually want to start off with a Sunday run here. The reason being, I have already done a Castorous run with Tribbie on the channel, so if you want to see the performance, then you can do that, but in the interest of time, I will tell you right now, that took us about 27 cycles. We were close to getting 28, but we did end up taking 27. And I actually want to start off with my Sunday run here, because it was actually quite interesting. As you can see, we we zero cycle the first half rather, which is quite impressive, but then we actually end up hitting a 28 cycle on Sunday, which is actually quicker than our RMC, which surprised me, because people always talk about how much better RMC is for Castorous rather than Sunday, and how Sunday has a bit of anti-synergy. Now, I will say Sunday does have some gameplay issues, although I actually feel like people doom post him and Castorous a bit too much, although I will get my thoughts on Sunday's pull value for Castorous in a minute. So if you don't know, basically the way that Sunday works is he will pull up your dragon, but this means you have less uptime on it. But to be fair, you normally try to explode the dragon as soon as you can anyway, so that doesn't matter too much. I mean, you can change his playstyle if you want, but basically what I was doing was most of the time I was just exploding him, and then I was just using Sunday to action advance Castorous so that she could get her dragon up sooner, because her skill obviously drains quite a lot of team HP, which gets her dragon out sooner. Now, the way that Sunday and the dragon works is that if you have Sunday's buff up on Castorous before her dragon comes out, then you won't get your buffs on the dragon. Instead, you need to use your Sunday ult when the dragon is on the field, which can be annoying in terms of Sunday ult uptime and also wasting energy on him, but there's not really anything you can do. That's just kind of how you kind of have to play it, unfortunately, which, you know, is a shame, but like I said, what can you really do? Although when you do actually get all the buffs, it is actually pretty damn strong. So as you can see, I swapped over to my Netherwing, and we had all of our Sunday buffs because we had over 100% crew rate. Now remember, with DDD, to be fair, I actually don't think Sunday's that good if you don't have Tribbie, because you can run her on DDD. Unless you're running Ron May on Dance, then I don't think the Sunday synergy is going to be quite good. What makes it good is that you can actually, if you using an S5 DDD, basically gives you an effective 134 speed on Castorous last Sunday. So if you make your Sunday one slower than your Castorous, then it will go Castorous, Sunday, Castorous, which is pretty damn strong. But yeah, when it comes to ult uptime on the dragon, it's not incredible, which is why I tend to just explode it as soon as I get it, and then use Sunday's advance in order to get the dragon sooner. That's also kind of how I treat it in Pure Fiction, and I actually think that's what allowed us to get a 28 cycle here. Just the fact that we were able to get so many dragons. What some people do is they will change up Castorous' dragon, where they won't explode the dragon. Instead, they will just leave it on field. Although, as you can see, we actually hit 318k there on the enhanced skill, which is kind of insane. Now, obviously, it is AoE, so, you know, it does get boosted there a bit. And if you're wondering why I clawed there, it's basically so that save it for the next wave, which is coming up shortly. But yeah, when you have Sunday's buffs up on the dragon, it really does deal some insane damage. Even the enhanced skill does a lot of damage. So yeah, the Sunday synergy, I actually feel like got doom posted a bit. Now, if you don't have Tribbie, then I wouldn't recommend playing it, and I wouldn't say you should pull Sunday for Castorous. I don't think that's worth it, but if you already have a Sunday, then you shouldn't feel bad about playing him with Castorous. So just make sure that you do the speed tuning correctly. You want your Sunday to have like 125 or 126 speed, something like that, depending on how much speed your Castorous has. Your Castorous can't have more than 6 speed substats, I believe. If you give her like 4 speed from substats and then Sunday on like 126 speed, then you should be fine. Yeah, that's my thoughts, and let's move on to a Mydei Dual DPS clearer now. Alright, and here we are once again now with a Mydei Dual DPS team. Now, one thing I should mention is that obviously there is a memory turbulence buffing Castorous here, so, you know, her performance is slightly inflated, but this is also buffing Mydei, so the dual DPS teams might actually be playing better right now than they would normally. However, what I should also mention is that obviously we're going up against Flame Remover, who doesn't have any imaginary weakness, and we do actually end up getting a 27 cycle here, which is quite similar to our RMC's performance. Now, is a dual DPS team quite as good as RMC? I'm not convinced, although I think if there's imaginary weakness, then, for example, like on the second half of this current Memory of Chaos, then maybe it's on par with RMC. Probably not better, but perhaps on par, maybe on par with the Sunday variant instead. But if they're not, and they're not getting shielded, then I do feel like this is probably going to be more like of a Payload Jiaoqiu level, which is what I will be showcasing next. But yeah, as you can see, obviously both Castorous and Mydei are dealing lower damage, but their average DPS here is still pretty solid in order to allow us to get a 27 cycle. So yeah, although we don't quite hit the 28 cycle, we're actually not too far off, all things considered. Maybe if my Mydei was better built, because my Mydei's build is quite reliant right now on having a Sunday. So, you know, maybe if his build was better, then we actually could have gotten a better performance. I mean, yeah, he's kind of like on 80% crit, 180% crit damage, I believe. Whereas with Sunday, he's on like 100, 250, 280, something like that. Sometimes even 300, depending on the LIGHTCONE I'm using. So, yeah, it's definitely not ideal, but we do end up getting a, like I said, a 27 cycle rather than 28 cycle, which, you know, all things considered decent, but like I said, it's probably highly dependent on the MOC and the boss lineup. But finally, let's move on to the full free-to-play run. And finally, this leaves us with the Tribbie teams, where I am going to be using a full free-to-play team using Pela, RMC, and Gallagher. Another popular option here would be Ronmei. One thing I will say is when I tested Ronmei, I got a 25 cycle, although I actually got quite bad RNG. I probably could have gone a 26 cycle. What I actually really felt was the action advance delay. I do think normally Ronmei would be a better choice than Pela or Jiaoqiu. However, considering the fact that to deal a lot of damage to this guy, you are kind of relying on him spawning in his summons. So the action delay, and then also I freezed him at one point, which really messed up my run. So yeah, it probably could have been a 26 cycle. So I'd say probably expect around 26, maybe just about 25 if you're using Ronmei. If you picked up her E1 from the 5-star selected, then you actually have a pretty damn good unit there. And if she is E1S1, then she can actually probably rival Tribbie, if I'm being completely honest, because even her LIGHTCONE is good for CASTORICE. Now, also, I will say I used Pela here. You do have to be careful with Pela's uptime on her ultimate to time it with the summons. That's the one annoying thing about Pela, which is why Jiaoqiu will probably be better here, but I chose to go for Pela just so that this is as relatable as possible. If you do have Jiaoqiu, the good thing is that he basically has unlimited uptime and that you will always have your debuffs on the target. The issue with Jiaoqiu, however, is that CASTORICE doesn't deal basically any ultimate damage. Well, actually, no, she's incapable of dealing ultimate damage. She only deals damage with her Memo Sprite and her skill, basically. So, yeah, if you're using Jiaoqiu, you only actually get 35% vulnerability as opposed to 50 if you're using him on a unit like Acheron, who attacks with her ultimate. So, I will say if you're having like energy issues, or if you're having, for example, issues with uptime, if they spawn in too many summons, then Jiaoqiu will be better than Pela. If not, then Pela can be just as good, if not maybe slightly better than Jiaoqiu, because she does offer quite a bit of dash thread. I am running mine on the event LIGHTCONE, so I basically have a 2-turn ultimate, but that also means I'm not running Pearls. Partly because I don't have Pearls legit on my account whatsoever, despite the fact that I've basically been playing for 2 years, which is slightly unfortunate. So, yeah, as you're going to see, we do end up getting a 25 cycle here, just about. So yeah, Pela is a pretty decent unit for casters. She's not perfect, but you can use her. This is a full free-to-play team which managed to 25 cycle, which is fairly impressive. However, the problem is, of course, like I said before, this MOC shills casters quite a lot. So, you know, this is actually probably more of a 24 cycle, and then you kind of have to hope that you have a stronger second side than your first side. So, yeah, Tribbie is definitely quite wanted for Castorus, although I guess not necessary. But with that being said, let's move on to some final thoughts on Castorus and her teams. Well then, as you can see, Castorus is definitely a very strong unit, and although her LIGHTCONE options aren't perfect, they're also not as restrictive as people make them out to be. Like I said, any 1164 LIGHTCONE is pretty decent, or 1058, you don't necessarily need a victory in a blink. Now obviously these are far worse than her signature LIGHTCONE, but she is so strong. We can hope that maybe in the future, kind of like how Boundless Choreo came out for Acheron, we end up getting a LIGHTCONE with decent base HP, maybe 1058 Remembrance 4-star Gacha LIGHTCONE. You know, that would be pretty cool, although, you know, can't speculate too much. We don't know what's going to come in the future. When it comes to her team performance, if you have Tribbie, she is very, very good. If you have Sunday, he's very usable. If you don't, RMC is fine. I wouldn't pull Sunday just for Castorus. If you don't have a Tribbie, then you might see a few more issues arise. Although if you have Ronmei, she's going to be a fine replacement. You should still be able to minimum 25 cycle, even when the memory turbulence isn't shitting Castorus super hard. If you have an E1 Ronmei, then even better. And if you have an E1 S1 Ronmei, which you can dedicate to Castorus, then even better. But like I said, if you don't, Pela and Jiaoqiu are fine, although I would try to pick up a Tribbie as soon as you can on rerun. I mean, if you have an E1 Tribbie, then your Castorus is going to be pretty insane no matter what. If you're pulling just for fun and you don't want to pull any Eidolons on any characters, then Castorus is a good unit. If you are willing, you know, picking up her S1 would be very good. Picking up Tribbie's E1 would also be very good. I think Tribbie E1, Castorus S1, that unit will probably even last you even 2 years if we're being entirely honest, but purely E0S0 Castorus is still very strong, even with E0S0 teammates. Like I said, with Tribbie, very strong. E0S0 Sunday, also strong. I feel like people do posted it too hard, but like I said, I wouldn't pick him up as a dedicated support for her. When it comes to her team building, if we go into here right now, the thing is, if you want to run her with Sunday, units like Mydei or Aglaya do rather Sunday, and I would prioritize Sunday with them, which is why I do actually think you are just fine going with this team comp. Obviously, if you want to use Gallagher on Super Break, you could swap him out for a Luocha. Technically, someone like Huahua is usable, but I would stick to Gallagher or Luocha. If you already have a Runmate and not a Luocha, then obviously you can pick Luocha from your selector if you want more options for your RMC. But yeah, like I said, you can also run double DPS teams. So yeah, CastoricE is just a very fun unit with a lot of different team combinations, which are all pretty damn strong. All of them actually a minimum 25 cycles. You can expect all teams shown to be about probably 1 cycle slower if they cleared convincingly. If they just about cleared, then maybe they'll be 2 cycles slower, such as the Pela team. But yeah, like I said, it all depends on the unit lineups. And yeah, like I said, definitely pick up a Tribbie if you haven't yet for your CastoricE. I wouldn't want to say a must pull, but you know, it's pretty damn good to have her. But like I said, if you have a Tribbie, then you are good to go, because literally her 2 best in slots are basically 4 stars. And then if you have a Sunday and you're willing to use them, or slash you want to use them, then that's also going to be good. And like I said, you can also choose to play them in dual DPS teams. But when it comes to a team ranking, I'd say right now RMC Tribbie, you can't go wrong with it. Sunday Tribbie, if it's speed tuned, is also pretty damn good. Since HP mechanics are being shielded right now, then I would also put Mydei in that top tier. If they weren't shielded, but you're going up against an imaginary weakness character, I'd probably put it in a middle tier. And then if you're using him when HP isn't getting shield against non-imaginary weak, then I would put him about the same tier as a Pela or a Jiancho. Runmei would also probably be in the middle tier, but she can go up if you have her E1 or her S1. But yeah, that's my thoughts for CastoricE. Let me know how you've been finding CastoricE. E0S0, do you think she's free to play friendly or not? Let me know down below. And with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed, found this helpful, and see ya.